What the future holds in terms of technology and its usage is something that's been deliberated a long time now. Our next two sessions are focusing on these technological changes and its impact on customers. To tell us more, please welcome on stage the chair for this track, Ankur Dasgupta, VP Marketing Entity Data. He's going to introduce our speakers for the next two sessions, but quickly, a little bit about him. So he's VP for India and APJ, Marketing and Communications for Entity Data. What's not on his bio is the fact that he's an avid off-roader, and he's apparently toppled his Jeep more times than he can count without a scratch on him. Let's just call Lady Luck to attention on that note. And a lot of people apparently call him Mr. Metaphysical because he's always trying to connect the dots between logic and what's metaphysical, so that's a fairly interesting thing. And he's married to a state-level basketball champion for the last 20 years and hasn't managed to defeat her in a single game just yet. So, Ankur, the stage is all yours for the next set of sessions.
Thank you so much. My mic working? Check. Yeah, so when I met my wife, we saw a basketball place. I'm tall. She's tall as well. And she said, do you know how to play? I didn't know how to play. But then the male ego took over. I said, anytime, I'll beat you. I'm still trying that for 20 years. So that was the joke. On to the topic for today. I don't think we can, we all know the importance of our mobile phones. That's what we are going to focus on. There used to be a time when we had that beloved Nokia 3310. I really want to go back to that phase as well because it is so pervasive. It is so intrusive. And at the same time, what gets my goat is that spinning thing that comes in whenever my app is not doing well, when things are hanging. So we did a search, NASCOM, and we got together and we started searching for someone who would make us get rid of that spinner. And that's a head spin, right? So I would want to introduce the next speaker and a fellow Xaverian. For those who don't know who a Xaverian is, someone who studied at St. Xavier's. That's me, and that's Gina James, VP for Headspin. She began her career at Google, and then she's now in the west coast of the US, where she's working for this organization, which promises to get rid of that head spinner. With that, Gina, please come over.
Can you guys hear me? Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ankur. I have a question for you. So when was the last time you kept your phone aside?
So last year, December 25th is when I took my mandatory time off. And I said, okay, let's do a mobile detox. Toughest time. Keeping your phone aside and not living with it, I think today has become very difficult. So that was when I tried it. I don't know whether I'll try it again or not. But if you can get rid of that head spin, nothing like it.
We will do our best. We're doing our best to explain this and share our learnings with our developers and companies around the world. So hopefully we'll get rid of the spinner wheel.
Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. Great. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Gina James. I am the VP of Developer Products and Platforms at Headspin. Prior to Headspin, I was at Google for 13 and a half years. I worked with companies across the AdWords organization, the publisher teams, and for the last 5.5 years, I was focused on the Play and Android side, so very, very invested in the developer ecosystem, and really excited and very, very grateful to be here to be able to share my learnings from a both personal standpoint as well as from the lens of the companies that I've supported over the years across different continents. I am native to India, actually. I was born and brought up in Calcutta, like Ankur mentioned, graduated from St. Xavier's, majored in economics, and I moved to Hyderabad to join Google in 2006, and that seems like a really long time ago because these things have evolved in our hands in those years, and as you can imagine, how much technology has evolved. My parents are from Kerala, so I have the north, the south, the east, west, all of them in me, and now I'm on the west coast in California. I want to start with something that is personal to me in terms of how much the phone has evolved. If you're aware and if you know the time that I'm talking about, I got my first phone in 2003, 2004, and it was a hand-me-down Nokia, the same, what Ankur mentioned, the Nokia phone, and it was a hand-me-down. Data was really expensive. Even, you were charged even when you get a call or an SMS, and I can see nods in the audience. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. And I landed in Hyderabad with this phone and a whole bunch of, like maps printed out, a contact book with emails and phone numbers in case I get lost because I was new to the city. And now when I look back, you can see how much technology, how much internet access and consumption has increased so that these supercomputers, you can't go without these. In fact, you start buying more portable battery packs, more than phones nowadays, to make sure that you have one in your handbag, one at home, one at work, right? And so it's amazing to see that, and it's amazing to see how much India has evolved, especially in terms of internet access and penetration, and just easy access to data. Phones are aplenty, in fact, more than you would want in some cases, lots to choose from. And I'm here to tell you a little bit more about what we are doing, what trends we're seeing in the marketplace, and how can you build successful businesses by driving really good mobile and digital experiences. I will start with what is Headspin. I couldn't say it much better. I will actually tell you a little bit of story of how the company name came to be. Our founder and CEO, Manish Lakhwani, was at the airport with his daughter one day in Asia, and his daughter was trying to load the YouTube app on her tablet. And at some point, she was like, "Dad, my head is spinning. This content's not loading. What's going on?" And that's how the company's name came to be. And we're trying our best to put across information, solutions, and product and platform for our companies so that they can access and they can test, they can monitor, and they can get the analytics for how to improve their mobile web, app, IoT, and 5G experiences. So moving along, let me tell you the real reason I'm here today. You would think that with all of this that we've done throughout the years, in the last 4 or 5 years especially, we've made so much strides in terms of getting down the cost of your phone or the cost of data, as well as storage capabilities on your phone. And you would imagine that now, in the 2020s and beyond, it's probably easier to sit back and now let mobile drive that, right? Mobile driving the customer experiences. And I'm here to tell you that it's probably true now more than ever that your work has just begun. Because what's going to happen, and I'll show you quickly with some of the slides that we have here today, what are users experiencing in spite of having such great access to content as well as amazing product and services that businesses are bringing out to the users. And so in this era, what I think is more important is now that you've figured out, now that the conditions around in terms of access to internet, access to great phones at reasonable costs are available, what is it that your users need? They need content right here, right now. They need relevant content to what they were looking for, and they also need it as soon as possible without any disruptions. So what is it that you should really focus on? Do you really want to focus on the technology so that the users can see the tech that you're using? Or do you really want to focus on the customer experience? And I think you should focus on the customer experience, because the customer experience needs to be forefront for that customer. It's not about the cool tech that you use to engage with the customer, because that needs to be pervasive. It needs to be taken for granted, right? And so now more than ever, it's important that you invest more time and resources in thinking about how can you make your customer experience as flawless and as seamless as possible so that they can continue to engage with your content and give you more business, more satisfaction, more engagement in the long run. And if you were to think about this as business owners and as members of the tech community that who's here today, this is a stat that Google Play and Android, this is me borrowing from my Google days, Google Play and Android shared a while back at I/O in 2018 and 2019. When you listen to your customers, more often than not, 40% of the time when people were leaving one-star reviews on the Play Store, they were talking about app performance issues. They were talking about stability, they were talking about crashes, and they were talking about app speed. And when people were leaving 5-star reviews, Google Play was able to analyze those and look at the themes and say that most of the time when people were leaving 5-star reviews, they were praising the app speed and the performance. Now let me bring it back home. Raise your hands if you have actually wanted to go try out a new restaurant with a new cuisine and you looked at the ratings and reviews. Everybody? Okay, good. Keep your hands raised. keep your hands raised, if you actually chose a restaurant that showed 3.5 stars instead of 4.2. That is exactly what your users are doing when they go to the App Store or the Play Store. There is no way that someone out of the goodness of their heart is going to download your app when it's 3.2 stars, especially if most of the reviews are talking about stability and crashes. Because you don't want to keep that phone. You don't want to keep it yourself. Then how would your users keep your app on the phone, right? And this is not just for the Play Store. It's also for the App Store. It's prevalent across the App Store on the iOS as well. Most of the reviews that people leave, especially in terms of negative reviews, have to do with stability. They have to do with performance and client-side performance, as well as battery issues. And this is true even from both the Play Store as well as the App Store. In fact, on the App Store, they actually did a review and understood this in terms of business metrics. They saw that there was a 5x review, 5x improvement in revenues whenever the average of the rating on the app went from 2 to 4 stars. And that's pretty powerful in terms of just getting that foot in the door. If your rating is going to be up there in front of people to look at, and that's what helps them click on that install button, then making sure that you put that best foot forward is absolutely necessary. And by the way, is there a downside really in terms of performance? Even the big companies seem to be saying that as well. So Amazon released the stat recently saying every 100 milliseconds of latency causes 1% in sales. And that's huge for a scale and for the magnitude at which Amazon and other e-commerce players are in the market. And I want to draw a parallel. I want to actually bring in a point here that is really important to see and think about. When you have e-commerce players or when you have other companies that are providing similar services and goods to people, it's more likely that I can get that same shirt on another website or an app. So how many times am I going to have that poor user experience on the same app or on the same mobile web when I can get the same product elsewhere at a seamless experience on mobile web or app? And that is what is important, because you can get the same product in another place. And as you know, I'm a deal seeker. I'm always going to look for a good experience, and I'm going to look for good discounts. But if an app is going to constantly crash on my screen, I'm going to find another alternative. And for Google, an extra 0.5 seconds in search page generation time dropped traffic by 20%. And that is significant for a company like Google, especially when a lot of the content is behind that search button. So this is something that Benedict Evans actually shared at Davos recently, and I wanted to actually bring up in terms of showing the full scale of how much we have grown as technically connected audiences. So in terms of if you look at the global population, we're about 5.5 billion adults around the world. We have about 5 billion smartphones, as in mobile phones in the market, and about 4 billion smartphones. And so we're talking about the scale. And when you look at India and you bring it back home, India just crossed US as the most, in terms of smartphone shipments. In fact, it grew, and it had 158 million shipments, which was a growth of 7% year over year. And even when you look at connected and internet-connected audiences, India is the second largest online market. Second to, does anybody want to take a guess? Good, yes. And so when you think of that, and you look at all the, you've improved the cost of data, because there's been a massive disruption in the space from Jio as well as other network and carriers who have been following suit. Many large corporations are trying to find out where's the next Jio phenomenon, because they want to tap into that early because they've learned from India, right? And you can also see that more and more users are going to be owning a phone very soon. But then owning a phone and having a great experience are two different things. And this is where it's really important to think of, cost is not an issue. Data storage is no longer an issue. Capabilities on the phone, the camera is probably going to be sold as an add-on very soon. And also other areas that have already been improved. So you would imagine that you are in a place where you should be able to relax now. Do you think you can actually sit back and relax and let your mobile drive because all the other externalities have been fixed? Is there anyone who would dare to raise their hand for this? Okay. So why? And this is something is very, very known to everybody here. It would be impressive if I could actually take a scan of the room and ask everybody to tell me what phones they have, because I'm pretty sure that we're going to have the most diverse set of mobile phones and internet connections right here in this room, right? And that's the challenge that I hear from developers around the world, especially when I was at Google and now I'm at Headspin. Fragmentation is crazy. We have new phones coming into the market every month or so. I was at a movie hall in India 2, 3 months back, and I was watching a Hindi movie. And instead of the trailers, I was excited about the trailers. I'm always excited about trailers. I actually ended up seeing 5 commercials on new phones. And it was just insane because I was like, how many phones are coming out every time? And it was just amazing how much that mind share, and your users are sitting there and watching movies, but there's this advertisement that's coming with the next Oppo and the next Vivo. And so that fragmentation is really, really crucial to pay attention to, because if you're going to pick for your audiences just the top 5 phones that they're most consuming, then you're missing out the whole gamut of high-end, mid-tier, and low-end phones that majority of your users are going to be on. And so building and developing experiences for them are going to be more crucial now. As Ankur mentioned, the spinner wheel, it hasn't gone away, right? I mean, it's either that or a progress bar. Or they'll put in a nice, if you've used the Calm app, it's the most calmest thing. They will actually have a spinner wheel, but it'll tell you, why don't you take a breather? And that is actually a spinner wheel, but it makes you look like you are still getting into the zone of meditation. But why is that still very much alive? And there are many conditions and many impediments. You can actually see this in many of your experiences. Some people have seemed to have figured it out, and I want to actually highlight that later on. You'll see some of the companies have done really well in terms of understanding that at an early stage and investing in infrastructure and tools to make sure that those experiences are seamless. So the spinner wheel is active, and I want to do my best. I'm not taking on a massive, initiative here, but I think we all owe it to ourselves and to our users to get them quickly to the content that we have so lovingly developed. And other conditions that go in, network geo. So interestingly, a few years back, I mean, at least until I left in 2012, but until then, it's really hard. Like if you take your phone and you have your Airtel connection and you go from Calcutta to Bangalore, you have to pay roaming. You don't have that roaming anymore, but you still have network geo variations. How Airtel or Jio will work in Calcutta will be completely different from how they render on a device and how they support those devices and users in another market, say Bangalore. And so being able to understand those network and geo variations are another area that you want to think about, because your users are going through that. And you may not be, because you have the best phone and you have the best connection, but your users probably are not. And they also still continue to have stability issues. There are issues still reported on crashes, on apps not responding, high battery. Think about it as how many of us are consuming content just sitting here in the comfort of their living room or at this conference, looking at their phone, and that's static, more or less. Your networks are not changing too much. But most of your users, and you included, are actually consuming content on the road, right? I mean, when you go for a run, you have a running app that's playing in the background, you have a music app that is running around in the background, and you have a network condition that's not Wi-Fi. And there's only so much you can run with a battery pack in your hand. So understanding those users' experiences and being able to develop experiences that are uninterrupted, no matter where the users are, is also an issue, and it's also a concern. And believe it or not, developers are finding out hack ways to overcome them. You will find content like this, like for example, the one with YouTube offline mode. There's only so much you can actually blame the carriers all the time. Okay, the carrier's not working, but the carriers are doing more sophisticated nowadays. We know this from our Headspin partnerships. There are carriers around the world who are trying to understand what are the KPIs of the top apps and games that are most consumed on their network, and how are they performing? Because they want to be able to go back to their top apps and games and say, hey guys, the network is doing well. You really need to do something. Or the other way around. And those are interesting developments that we're seeing on the side, because somebody has to own up, somebody has to actually start doing things, and you can't actually wait for carriers to be working amazingly or devices to become as, similar in shape or size and storage and capacity. You would also have to start doing things like testing and performance management on your own. So these were just some of the examples, and here I'm highlighting a few others that are still relevant in terms of barriers to why your customers and your users will have uninterrupted or interrupted experiences on mobile, on apps, on desktop, whether it's on 5G, whether it's on IoT devices. And these are just some of them. Carriers are one that I just explained. Operating systems. Android has so many operating systems. You still have OS versions that go up to KitKat. And iOS also is now coming in. You do have users on iOS 11, 12, and 13, not just only 13. And device types, which we just talked, which I just referenced, and app versions. So in terms of like the version for your app, when you first launched your app and you always end up reiterating with bug fixes and with other areas that you are always continuously improving on. And also for markets, in different versions of your app that you show for different markets. So the version of your app that you show for UK might be very different from the version that you show to the India users. Maintaining them, making sure that those experiences are as seamless as possible, again, a big challenge. And these are the impediments that developers have to continue to like think about so that they can provide these quality experiences to their users. And above all, I can tell you this from a personal experience, I will think 10 times if a fintech app takes a long time for letting me know if my money's been debited or not. And that's a big trust factor, because that's the time it takes to actually make the call to the servers and figure out, is it a UPI issue? Is it a bank issue? Is it something else that a third-party app is doing? And it's really hard for a developer to actually give you that kind of an experience, because most of the time they don't know it themselves. So how do you break down and unbundle all those processes and microprocesses that are going on in the back end to make sure that your user is not the one suffering, to figure out if their money just went or not? I had this experience recently, but it was a good one. It turned out to be weird. It started out me not sure if my money actually went to this customer service was really great, and so I was able to get the money back, but I used the Remitly app to send money from, I'm based out of California, so I send money back home to my parents. And I used Remitly, and I sent it, and the money didn't, I didn't get to know till 2 days later that the money was not debited. And my parents needed the money immediately. And so I didn't get to know that, and then I followed up with customer service, and they told me that there was a mistake in the way I added my account number 5 months back. But no one told me that. And so for 5 months, I thought I already had my account, so I just hit the quick. And you know what the weirdest part is? It takes less than a second for money to get out of your bank account, but it takes more than 10 days for that money to come back. And it is not your fault. It is not your fault. It would be something completely different. In this case, it was my oversight. But there are lots of cases where it's not your fault, but money takes a while to come back, and it's all your hard-earned money. And so user trust is really important in terms of making sure that your users are having the best possible experience, because those users are trusting their bank accounts, their PAN card, their Aadhaar ID, in terms of like making sure that they get the products and services that you're offering them. And it's really important to maintain that trust throughout the user's life cycle and the journey that they take on your product and platform. I had mentioned that I would tell you about some businesses. These are just examples of some businesses that we see who are doing really well at this. And they're not thinking about performance and performance management as a secondary thought. They're actually thinking about performance as the very first thing that they need to get right, the foundation that needs to be better laid out in terms of making sure that all their experiences are tested as much as possible on real devices, real SIM-enabled devices across wherever their users are. And these are some examples that I wanted to highlight here for some of our partners that we've seen who've done this really well. And performance and the culture of testing and monitoring is ingrained in everybody. It is not necessarily the function of one team, but it's actually a complete cumulative experience that everybody in the organization thinks about when they're developing new features and new products for their users. And what is that secret that these guys seem to have figured out? And they are not the ones who waited to get 1 million installs before they actually prioritized performance. They started out early. It is that they realized that it's really important to have a unified, a very proactive approach to engineering when you are looking at quality engineering, monitoring, and analytics across apps, devices, and networks. So it's not, you have a solution for your web team, and then that is different from your app team, and it's very different for, your IoT experiences. And it is hard, it's complex, but this is the way that we've been thinking about breaking it down. You make sure that you have a testing, a monitoring, and an analytics offering that you're looking at that is more pervasive and available all in one platform as much as possible. And it's looking across apps, devices, and networks so that it captures all the real, as much access that you can get to the global pool of real devices out there on real SIM-enabled devices. And you want to look across web, IoT, mobile, and 5G. And you do all of this in one pervasive, one uniform platform so that you can see the entire flow of your customer user journey. You don't want to have multiple tools in different places trying to reconcile at the end of the day, because when something goes wrong, you will have to figure out which part or where was that cog in the wheel in terms of identifying the issue that came up on someone's device. And you can't really troubleshoot with a screenshot. So if you've been in my place where I've actually had experiences where our leadership team in certain teams that I worked at would wake up in the morning and they'll have this terrible experience and they'll send me a screenshot and I'm supposed to like figure out what happened. And that's really hard. Like, what are you going to do with a screenshot? You can't like get any information out there. You don't know what device they were on, what version of their app, and you can't recreate it. So you want to make sure that you have that all in one place, and also looking at it from across browser, because your users are not just, think of Spotify, think of WhatsApp, think of YouTube. You may consume them on your phone when you are on the go, but when you get to work or when you get home, you might switch to your desktop or your TV or any other or a laptop. And those experiences can't be defined as, the mobile app team is going to figure out this area and the mobile web team is going to do that. They have to actually be as cross-platform and form factor as much as possible, because your user is still the same user. And finally, you want to innovate along the way. You don't want to just, sit and wait for situations and products to come out there, but you also want to think about your users, because, as I mentioned before, your users are on the go. It's the same. We did this analysis we have this, I just wanted to use this as an example, but we have this product called Anywhere Mobility Unit. It is mainly, that's me right there, staring out, and that's we have our member in our company, Sydney, who's also up there, and we just wore the backpack. We had the servers, we had real phones, and we loaded the running apps. We just walked around the block, and you would imagine that a block will typically have a square as you finish the performance session, but there was an app, and I'll share later on if you want to take a look at the blog, but we posted the results. We actually found discrepancies and inconsistency in how running apps were tracking the actual distance, and then comparing it across how much energy they're draining, how much net, CPU percentage, as well as memory, which are all important things as you think about your users on the go consuming content. And are you even testing that today? Are you even listening to your users who are complaining about how they are on the go and they are not able to connect and do the things that you want them to do while they're in a moving vehicle, or probably even in a bus or commuting from work back and forth? And finally, you can't do all of this if you actually work in silos. And I know this from working at Google, now at Headspin, and I see this across all the companies that I work with. Having separate teams was good at a certain point in time, right? Like, you want to have an organization. There's a marketing organization, there's a tech organization, there's engineering, there's service, customer success, and there's sales and business development. But also making sure that the language and the narrative of what you're trying to do is really important, because you don't want these teams to actually develop their solutions in silos. For example, as a marketing team, you're going to be focused, and if, say, you're an primarily an app-focused business, and you are, you're dependent on users downloading, finding you, and downloading the content. Now, what happens if the marketing team, all they care about is, let me get as much installs as possible. I don't care what the rating is. I don't care whatever anything else is. I have the money, I can spend, I have the budget, I'm going to go ahead and get as many users. Let product and eng figure out what to do with them after they've downloaded the app. And that's not going to go a long way, because the ROI on that is going to decline over time. You really do need your marketing team to talk to your product and engineering teams to understand what kind of features, what kind of solutions they're bringing in, and what kind of feedback they're getting from their users, because then you can work together and actually make sure that your experiences are as seamless as possible. And you also want to take a look at what tools and products out there are actually offering you that kind of a gamut of experience where you can manage these critical KPIs that you care about across multiple areas and facets. So that's it for me now. I am very excited, as I mentioned, to be here. We're here. My team is here. Please find us if you have any questions. And obviously, I'm going to be around for another 5 to 10 minutes if you have any questions right now, and I'm happy to take them. But I also hope that you guys, as much as I'm trying my best to get rid of that spinner wheel, I hope I have enough support from everybody here to help us do that as well. Any questions for Ankur and me?
Check.
Okay.
So I was telling Gina the other day that in India, the way mobile has really become so pervasive in our life. 5 years ago, we used to sell to ABCD. Do you remember who the ABCD were? Tell me.
Tell me. I was going to say American Born Confused Days.
Aya by Chaprasi driver. Mobile has gone to that extent. If I want work done in my house and I call someone to do a false ceiling for me, the POP guy tells me, sir, can you WhatsApp where you want the work to be done? I need to send that photo to him. So mobile has become part of our life and it's going to stay. That's one part of it. The second part of it, really, and that's kind of a segue into our next session also, is I often see my son talking to Alexa, ordering things. So I think of myself as a marketeer and I think, okay, who will I be marketing to? Who will I send my messages to? Because if Alexa is telling, hey, Mahiu, you want to buy a football, here are your 4 choices. And then my son says, okay, third one is good, send it home. I'm not selling to anyone. So what happens to us? So the question to you again is, how do you also tackle what and where the AI platform is today? And where's the touch to our humanity over there?
Ooh, very loaded question. So I do believe that there is the human element that led to that level of intelligence in the first place. It's a lot of the, your users are already telling you a lot about themselves, what they like, what they don't like. You listen carefully from that, you build your models on that, and you keep reiterating because you don't want to let, the model just run on its own, taking into effect just a few things that they've heard from users. So it needs to be a continuously iterative model because at the end of the day, the reason why Alexa offered that choice to another choice is backed by historical data or even relevant data of today of what is popular, what are most users looking at, and what have you yourself demonstrated you like. And you want to be delighted. If you are looking for a pair of shoes, you do not want to see a pair of, socks. You don't want to say a pair of earmuffs because you want to make it as relevant as possible to the user's request and search. And so it is backed by a lot of manual information that users have already depicted, and then layer on AIs. And then I also have this, personally, I would love to also get a wildcard, sometimes to just, you don't want to just have, if you search for what are the benefits of keto diet, you're not going to see non-benefits to the keto diet. You're only going to see benefits because you've already searched for that word. You've already given them that you want good benefits only.
Yes.
If you search for bad, you're going to get only bad. But ever so often, I would love to see a wild card. Like, challenge that. There are good and bad, and here are the good results, here are the bad results, and here are mediocre ones. You pick as a user what you care most about, and then let's learn from you. And that would be great to see. Because right now, it looks like what you search for is how you find your answers, and it becomes a one-track conversation versus throw a curveball here and there and try and see if the user actually takes it and improvises on it and might actually have a better experience making that choice rather than only the one experience that they started from.
Good. So any more curveballs from the audience? Questions for Gina?
Oh, we have one.
Just get you a mic.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Soma. And what's bothering me is privacy and security and trust. I think when I listen to your presentation, we are focused on productivity and speed and performance. But how much of mind space is going into all the data I'm giving you as a consumer?
Yeah.
What's being done about that?
So in terms of the platform, and there are a couple of things here. So there's Headspin as a platform and what we're doing, and then what others are doing in the space, right? Overall, I'll explain it with a use case, and it probably will make sense. So we work with a couple of companies who've announced that they are going to launch maybe a new experience very soon. But they have to trust a platform to test and figure out the performance issues, right? How do they bring that performance issue, that particular experience that they're building, into a platform like Headspin and trust that no one else is going to see it? And that's a big part for us because nobody has seen those experiences. Nobody has seen that hardware yet or that software that they're trying to build. And they want to still focus on performance from an early stage. And so our platform is as much, in terms of privacy and security, but assuring them that all the data that they are bringing in terms of a pre-release version of their app, or it's a brand new app, or even a version that they're trying to launch in a brand new market, are all conducted in a safe way because they have access to real devices and that are dedicated to them. And they will be able to they and their company members are the only ones who are going to be using that platform and those devices. No one else is going to see what is happening. In terms of real user data, since we're also focused on like the early part of the funnel in terms of pre-release, you want to avoid, I think this is one part that I often hear as well, is you want to avoid having surprises after you've launched your experience. That has been traditionally the case. You've launched the experience, and then you get reports on crashes and issues. But what if you take the game further up? Why are you waiting for the user to come back and tell you that it didn't work for them when you have so many avenues to test beforehand? And so being able to provide that sort of a level of secure and private environment where people can test, comfortably bring their app experiences, their web experiences, and being able to test across new or existing hardware like phones and desktops and other solutions out there so that they can actually see that when they launch, it's not launching out into the wild, but it's a well-thought-out experience that they're bringing to their users. And so that's how we look at privacy and security. We take that extremely seriously because at the end of the day, if there is no secure environment where somebody can bring their product into market and be able to test or take out a version of their app, maybe they're launching a new feature that they've not told anyone about, and you want to be able to test and bring it out to users rather than run other tests out there, then you want to be able to provide that service. And so that's really important for us. Otherwise, we won't last as a business for long if we don't give them that level of service.
That was a good question, actually, but if you realize, one of the things that almost all of us do, and tell me, raise a hand if you don't do it, is when you are installing the app, and the question comes from data and privacy, that's the fastest scroll we do to next. Don't we all? But I think, yes, people are getting more conscious about it.
Yeah.
Do we have time for one more? No.
Okay.
That will be all, Gina. Thank
you so much, Ankur. Thank you, everyone. Ooh, thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, you want this with me?
Yeah.
Check.